So we're absolutely thrilled to have our next designer. That's Sue McCleary, known as Passion Flower Sue. That's what everybody knows her as. Yay!
Yay!
And so she's going, I mean, is this your first time in Hawaii?
Yes.
Yes. So we're thrilled that we've been able to take her out to the greenhouses and to the botanical gardens so she can see how these products that we use, where they come from, how they're grown. And so we'll just see what she's got to say about her beautiful, beautiful, through your eyes. But I do want to mention that we will be doing a book signing. And so afterwards, over on this table, so if you could, that's like a half hour after your program. Just make sure to catch her because it'll get signed, right? And is there something else that you needed to say before we get started?
Yes. So if you look around, we have some of the pieces are all over the room, and there is an ongoing silent auction, which will benefit our breeding program. So if you've been seeing what you like and what we've developed, then certainly you can help us develop even more by supporting our program by bidding for the fabulous pieces in the silent auction. Thank you.
So without further ado, let's have Sue.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I'm really honored to be here. I feel like this is a very special trip already, and I haven't even started to explore. So obviously, you live, those of you from the islands, you live in a very special place. But for me, this is kind of like a visit to Flower Mecca, where things originate. So it's been just thrilling to look around. I mean, just like these friends, like I think you could just drill a hole in this and hang it on the wall. And for me, that's artwork, like done. It's so beautiful. So these are just up here to keep me company. So I'm Sue. I'm a florist from Ann Arbor, Michigan. I became a florist about 20 years ago, kind of by accident, as many of us do. At the time, I was making jewelry for friends. My friends started getting married because we were at that age-ish, and I was making jewelry for friends who were getting married. One friend ordered a bridal necklace and then confessed she hadn't hired a florist and asked me to do her flowers because I was creative. And I said yes, but I didn't think anything of it really. When I was designing her flowers, I had a very corny moment where time stopped. I realized that it was 12:30 a.m. I hadn't eaten, I hadn't stopped, I hadn't sat down. I was in like the flow state, you hear about. And I immediately recognized that I was supposed to be a florist. And that was a real relief because I was a very wayward child. I didn't have a true path, and I was really kind of worried, like, okay, I need to find like my path. So when I found it, I felt like incredibly grateful, and I started exploring the floral culture around me, and trying to learn as much as I possibly could. Because I had the jewelry background, I was attracted first to the little handiwork pieces. And so as I started to learn and get jobs working in the industry, I was always the one to make the corsages and the boutonnieres and the crowns and all of those things. Because I'm a total dork, I fell in love with corsages, and I recognized that it's a tradition, not as rich as the lei tradition that we have here, but it's a tradition that's kind of on its way out. And the US is really the only country that does corsages. As I travel the world, people are like, yeah, we know what they are, but we don't really do it. So I thought, how can I kind of inject my point of view into this aspect of floristry, because I see it as valuable because there's tradition there that's kind of on its way out. And then also it's a way for us to use kind of little tiny bits of things, so it's not expensive, but it's a way to show our craftsmanship and our artist point of view. So I kind of took the corsage on and started really trying to participate, like trying to update and innovate and come up with different ways to do corsages. That led to a fascination with wearables. I met one of my mentors, Francoise Weeks. That was like a pivotal moment where I allowed myself some quiet time to explore whatever weird idea was in my head. It was there at her studio that I realized that we are artists. We create visual works that are meant to evoke emotion in the viewer. So I really thought, wow, like I can be whatever kind of florist I want to be. And Francoise was a good example of someone who had a very distinct point of view. And she has something that she offers, and people come to her for that thing. She's not shape-shifting every time she gets a client. And that really sparked something in me. And it allowed me to see florists as artists, not just people who serve a client's point of view. So that was like, oh, yeah, this is something you can really get into and really explore for yourself. So now, fast forward, I'm a writer and teacher. I don't do events anymore, but I see my role as kind of twofold. I want to offer ideas to florists that are really like visually interesting and provoke like curiosity in the viewer so that the larger culture sees us as artists. So I want the viewer, the outside viewer, to kind of pause and look closer and think like, what is that? Is that real? You know, is that made out of flowers? So anytime I can offer an idea to florists that they can fold into what they're already doing that allows them to express themselves and make the public more curious, I think that elevates our industry because it adds value to what we do. And the second thing is really trying to, in my studio, take kind of pain points that florists have, maybe like sustainable mechanics issues or time issues. So I realized florists are really busy because I was in the trenches for many years and I did, you know, tons of freelancing and tons of my own weddings. So if I can kind of, you know, tinker and figure out processes that allow florists to make the work they really want to be making, offering them things that can help save time and just, you know, increase efficiency, then I feel like I can contribute to our industry. So those are my two things. Make the public more interested, make florists more, you know, efficient so they have more time to express their artistry. So that's why I'm here. That's why I'm here. So I'm going to share some ideas with you. A lot of them are very simple. I'm kind of gravitating towards that lately because, I don't know, there's like a freshness, a lightness in simplicity, using just a few elements, focusing on, you know, monochromatic palettes. So I hope you like them. And we'll start from teeny tiny, we'll work up to bigger. Okay, so the first idea I want to show you is one of the most simplest. Sometimes I'm frustrated, like I spend 10 hours on one project and 2 minutes on another, and the one that takes 2 minutes is the one that gets a lot of attention. But I'm leaning into that, and that's okay. So this is a very quick project that you can take and play with. It's great for video if you want to share video of something cool. So this is just an inexpensive headband that I bought at the Icing, you know, that little accessory store at the mall. You have one down the street. I saw it. So it has these little leaves on it. So these are like little nooks and crannies where you can wrap wire. So what I do is I take gold spool wire and cut different lengths and then wrap it around the leaves. So I start with one leaf, I kind of fold it in half, or start in half, wrap it around the leaf, pulling it tight so it doesn't budge. And then I bring that half towards the center of the headband. And then I choose another leaf on the opposite side, wrap, usually 3 times, just so it's nice and secure. And then bring the other tail of that wire to the center of the headband. And then using a jewelry plier, just do a simple twist. And then those ends, I just use my needle nose and I make a little platform, a little gluing platform. So it's just a little swirl of wire, but then that's like a little like lily pad to put in my flowers. Simplest idea. I like this for like flower girls. Dottie mentioned it would be perfect for flower girls. For a shoot, you know, when you are asked to participate in shoots and you're like, I don't have time, I don't have extra money. You just need a few little laterals of flowers that you might strip off anyway, You just tack them onto the little platforms, and then you have something impressive that looks really cool in photographs, but even better in video. So I shared this. I think I had too much coffee. I'm like, yeah. I shared this a few months back. Woo, now we're gonna get cuckoo with the glue. And I saw a lot of florists reposting, testing their own flowers, like this worked too, and it was just really a fun project, very simple. So I have Oncidium here, and this came from just a few laterals, like I said. I like to sort them by size, and then starting with some of the smaller ones towards the bottom, I just press it onto the little wire platform. And then on the back, I take another bloom that maybe has a blemish, and I just cut off a little bit of the petal, and then I back it so it looks finished from the back side too, so you can't see the wire. And then you just work your way around. So that also kind of sandwiches the platform between. I could do 2 blooms, but then it would be too 3D. I want it kind of flat. And then I just work my way around. And you can decide how many you want. You can decide how long you want them to be. You can play with them. It's really such a simple idea, but it's really fun. You can kind of face them, if you have a model you're working with, they can kind of come over and be kind of like face jewelry. And on video, they kind of like dangle and dance. So you can pass that around if you want. Yeah, yeah. A favorite one I did recently was with white kalanchoe. And the gown that the model had like little florets embroidered on the gown. So it looked like the florets were continuing and floating around her head. It was really cool. All right, so that's tiny idea 1. And let's move on to my favorite topic, corsages. So, like I said, I was the one making all the corsages. I did a lot of wiring. I did a lot of ribbon loops, traditional US corsages, right? With acetate ribbon and so on, bling and all that. I think there's a place for that, and I think it's cool. But I also love the idea of something a little bit more sophisticated, more of like a little interesting landscape of flowers without ribbon, because I think that is a little bit more grown up for someone who's not, going to a dance, for instance. So what I like to do is use jewelry blanks, kind of going back to my jewelry hobby before I was a florist. So I like a source called Jan's Jewels. They're in, I think like Oklahoma or somewhere middle US, but they ship. And you can get blanks of any shape and size. They make earring blanks, ring blanks, cuff corsage or cuff bracelets, anything you can dream up. So of course, this is a nice, sturdy base that can be worn after the fact. So I really enjoy that as well, that it's not just like a stretchy band or a slap bracelet. Those, again, have like a place, but this is something that you don't throw away after. So I like that anytime I can do that. So I'll pass this one around too. Thanks. Yeah. So on the cuff corsage, a few things. If you're not friends with glue, like I'm friends with glue, you need to know that the metal of the jewelry blank is kind of too slick. It doesn't have like any nooks or crannies, so you have to put a gluing platform down first for the glue to really set. So I like to do just like a little bit of waterproof tape. You can glue down a little bit of felt, anything to give you like a nice, reliable platform. I don't like to do leaves because I've found that some leaves are waxy and they can pull off, but I'm gonna break that rule today. But anyway, as a rule, I usually use something a little nubby or like plasticky even, because the glue loves that. So you can just do an arrangement of flowers kind of horizontally, and that's kind of the expected thing with this shape of bracelet. But I like to go vertically to have more space to create something artful and also just kind of create something that's a little bit more unexpected. So I'm going to use this palm. Anybody know the name of this? Rhapis? Okay, that's really cool. You could use a tea leaf, you could use other things too, but I liked how this was already like the width I wanted. So I'm like, oh, that's convenient. So I'm just gonna cut a little bit of that. I could leave the point, but I'm gonna round it out a little, I think. So this could be fabric. It doesn't have to be a leaf. I just thought, I have these the right size. You know, I'm in Hawaii. These are really like durable and strong feeling, so I'm gonna use these. So I take the 2 leaves. I'm sorry I'm doing tiny work and not everybody can see. And I put glue on both. And then I want to supplement this leaf so that I have a little more stability, but also so I can kind of bend the platform how I like, so I can wear it a little bit, make it a little more wearable and less stiff. So I'm just placing 3 probably 24 gauge, that might be 26 gauge. It could be a chenille stem, it doesn't have to be wire. And I'll cut the excess off. Okay, I'm just gonna be bad and use my clipper. And then I sandwich those. I can do it at an angle, which is kind of cool, like how I did with the one that's being passed. Or I can do it straight. And then I glue the back on. So then this becomes the gluing platform. I often use like marine vinyl, faux leather. You can use waxed canvas. You can, you know, thrift, you know, old fabrics that are, you know, cheap and cut them up. Upholstery, any upholstery fabric would do. Anything that doesn't fray or kind of like fall apart when you cut it works well. And if it's waterproof, that's even better. So now I have a gluing platform that I can use to add all my bits. And then I can bend it up. If I want more, you know, lift, I can manipulate it. And then I have, you know, something a little less expected. I was taught, you know, there's 2 reasons why you don't use hot glue. One, it like damages the tissue of the flowers. They can kind of turn mushy and fail and like fall out of the design. And then 2, when you put the designs in the cooler, the hot glue contracts, and then again, you can have some failure. So I like to glue onto something fuzzy. So there's some fibers there that can hang on to the glue. And then I just put them in a hydration chamber and put them somewhere cool. So instead of like, you know, 38 degrees in the cooler, maybe there's somewhere that's like 58 or 65 degrees. If you're not familiar with working with the glue, I place a little bit on the platform I'm working with, I place a little bit on the natural material I'm working with, and I let both kind of sit and get tacky. I set out like a assembly line, flip flowers over, put a dab, and then by the time I'm ready to work with them, they're ready to like get locked in place. Maybe they sit for about 15 seconds, something like that, 20, yeah. And then wait until it's completely dry. I just put everything, you know, I let it sit there maybe an hour, maybe 2 even, as I'm working, and then I just pop them into the hydration chamber. So hopefully that helps. But I have been testing with glue, and I like a heavy-duty glue gun from the hardware store, and then like a really good quality hot glue stick, not something from Michaels, you know, because those little tiny craft glue guns are really not good, in my experience. Yeah. Okay. So I'm trying not to be so glue dependent, because it really is a problem when you like something so much, you just keep like returning to that technique. So yeah, I'm exploring. I'm going back to wiring. I'm doing a lot of wiring lately. All right, so my next little idea I want to share with you is what I call a flower tattoo. I was actually inspired by Sean Michael Foley. He was Mayesh Design Star years ago, like one of the first ones. And he took, which was brilliant, cellophane off the flowers, like the flowers are wrapped in. He cut little shapes out of that, and then he glued flowers to the plastic, and then used a skin-safe glue to attach the plastic to the body. And then he had, you know, flowers just on the skin, and I thought that's a really cool idea. So I thanked him for it, and then I said I'm going to explore this a little bit, and I ended up finding this KT tape, this like kinesiology tape that you can get anywhere. I got this at Walmart in Hilo. The thing that's cool about this is you can do it ahead of time. So it has a paper backing, so you can make it like you would any other wearable. You can make it 2 days ahead, 3 days ahead, put it in a hydration chamber, and then deliver it to your person. This is a great one for photo shoots, I feel. And also it's really adaptable. It can go on a lapel even, it can go on a hat, it can go on a sign. You know, if you want a little floral detail on a sign at a bar for, you know, at a cocktail hour or something like that. So anywhere you want to stick flowers, anywhere you want a little landscape, you can use this. So I like to cut some contours into it so it looks a little more natural. Depends on where you're putting it on the body, but one thing I found, if I cut it too narrow, there's not a lot of power left in the adhesive, and if you put a lot of flower weight on a really narrow KT tape, then you can have a tattoo failure. So I cut usually something like this, depends on what I'm working with, and then the glue goes on the base, and then I gather my tidbits, and by the time I've gathered all my tidbits, the glue's tacky on the base and I can start working. Gathering tidbits is the most fun part, I think, and something that was really awakened for me. I was always a curious person, loved nature and loved kind of exploring and finding interesting little bits, but hanging out with Francoise Weeks, now that will have you finding bits. Like, you can't drive down the highway the same way ever again. Am I right, Rebecca? Yeah, you will never. Okay, so I found this. Yeah, I found this at the market today. This is a banana flower. This makes me so happy. There's babies inside. Look at that. They're so cute. So you can gather some babies, and they're in my color palette. These are also edible, right? The flower. Do you eat it sauteed or fresh? Cook it? Mm-hmm. So, and then don't stop there. You find something cool and then you examine it and you're like, oh, it also has this little like pearlescent shell-shaped aspect to it. So when I take that off, I can see the yellow stamens. I'm terrible. I don't know what a pistil and a stamen, which one's which. One of the two are yellow in this flower. I think it's the stamens. And then you have this little component too. So now I have two little cool things that I can use in my yellow and white color palette that I'm obsessed with lately. So I gather all those bits. And then I go for, what else do I have? I don't want to use too much because these flowers are so amazing, but I have this Gloriosa that has two, past blooms that aren't good anymore. So let's just use this little guy here. So I'll gather, and I'll use this more kind of like a leaf, like a little accent. So I've got a point that kind of goes this way, and this flower kind of also does that, so I'll kind of orient it like that. Always kind of working with allocating things in groupings. I'm a big fan of the golden ratio, so I like to do like a small, medium, and large kind of serving size of materials with space in between. So I work layer by layer, so I'll add all my banana flower, and then I'll go in with all of my orchids, and then my finishing smaller bits. And you've already seen the tattoo that I made, right? No, I haven't passed it out yet. Okay, here we go. So there's that one. So this could be a corsage alternative. It could be, if you're asked to do a shoot for, a brand or a collaboration with wedding planners or other creatives. The tattoos are amazing because you can put them anywhere. It could be a hairpiece, it could be a bracelet, it could go on a dog collar, like it could go anywhere. So it's a great piece to bring with you. And they're always really impressed. So if you want to do it directly on the skin with lighter things, you can use eyelash adhesive. I've used Elmer's actually in the book. I did a necklace. This is so practical. I painted Elmer's on her body in a necklace form, and then just used bachelor button petals on the Elmer's glue. So you can do like really cool things, but you have to use very light materials if you're using something skin safe typically. Some of the eyelash adhesives can hold more floral weight, but you kind of really have to hold it and wait, and it's kind of a process. Yeah. All right. So now the Gloriosas go on. So if I have a plan where I know I'm going to group things, I can work really quickly and efficiently, layer by layer. That's one of my main kind of guiding, my main approach, I guess. Adding all of one thing before moving on to the next. I feel like that keeps me working really quickly and with more confidence. I see some people, like they'll put like one larkspur in and step back, and then like a rose, and then a ranunculus, and that makes me insane because I could not work that way. It would take me forever to get anything done. We'll talk more about floral layers when I bring out a centerpiece, or a statement piece actually. So I'm trying to kind of create this little dreamy landscape with my materials. Let's put some of these little shell bits in. And I don't want it to feel flat, but I want it to be low profile enough so that it doesn't look bulky when it's on the body, so it looks elegant and kind of streamlined. So I'm thinking about that too, but I want some layering and some depth so it looks really special and artful. So I have sketchbooks. I'm sure you guys like sketch and collect ideas too. When something pops into my head that seems interesting and I don't have time to test it out, I'll just sketch it out and revisit it when I have time. So there's usually an idea, a rough idea of what I want to make. And then the materials, of course. So like best laid plans, when I was here at home, recipeing for this talk, I had a different idea of what I wanted to use. And then I got here and I'm like, oh my gosh, look at this and look at that. So, concepts that you might have in the queue waiting to test kind of combine with influences in your environment, and then that kind of turns into something. I actually wrote a little blog post that I'm going to share soon. It's called Issues and Inspiration. So I was at a dinner in San Francisco. We had just gone to this art show, and a painter we were having dinner with, who I just met that night, was saying that you can't teach creativity. And that made me I don't know, I got angry. It made me, I'm kind of a spicy person anyway. I get kind of spiced out kind of fast, And I'm like, what do you mean by that? Does that mean that you either have it or you don't? And that felt really not good. It didn't feel like a generous statement. So I thought about it, and I think that each person has what I call issues and inspiration. So each person has things that are important to them, their issues, or their, what they want to communicate through their work. And then each person is inspired by different things. So that's what makes each artist so individual. So an issue for me could be, I really like corsages, and I want corsages to continue to be a thing, in the culture. That's one of my issues. And then my inspiration is, well, I used to make jewelry, so I'll take jewelry aspects and design it more like you would an accessory and less like a corsage. So the issue I had and the inspiration to do it, based on my background and what I see, as important, kind of fuse together. So I think that's what creativity is, right? When those things kind of come together. Yeah, and everybody has their own, which is the most, I think, encouraging thing you can offer an artist is everybody has their own unique point of view and their own issues, and their own inspiration. So you can always kind of take confidence in that. Yeah. I'm like a floral pep talker. I think I'm becoming a flower mama in my middle age. All right, so at this stage, I would put it on something so it kind of rounds out so I can see the nooks and crannies that I've missed, because on the flat table, you're not going to get the contours that are, of the body. So then I'll go in with some Oncidium. And again, I'm not destroying a whole stem to make this little guy. I just took some of the laterals from the bottom of the stem that I felt I couldn't make use of in my other designs, and I used that. So I make these, like I said, a few days before, and then I package them. I have a bunch of Tupperwares at home, and I save like to-go containers. This was a bento box that we had for lunch a few days ago. And so I save my pieces in those kinds of containers, and then I pack them in craft paper boxes that are lined with shredded paper. And then the person's name gets written on top, and any instructions or anything like that in a nice little note, and then that's how it travels to the event. So I save the plastic at home for reuse, and I give out the craft paper because they can just recycle it. All right. So I'm not going to finish it completely because we probably need to move on, but you see there, and then there's one that's finished that's working its way around. So the thing that's important with this is you need to package it with an alcohol wipe, because there's lotions and sunscreen and natural oils on the skin, and if you have if you're trying to attach that little bit of adhesive to uncleaned skin, you'll have a problem. So I put a little alcohol wipe in there and then a little note. So they wipe, they let it dry, and then you just peel off the paper back, and then you really have one good stick. I've named myself the Corsage Ambassador, and I know that's super dorky, but I don't expect everybody to be interested in corsages or wearables, but it's something you can pull out when you need it, right? Like when a brand reaches out and they want to collaborate, it's something that grabs attention, it's unexpected, and it doesn't require a lot of money or supply cost. So those are the reasons why. So I realize I'm in a place of privilege where I am not selling day to day. So I am not the strongest pricing presenter, I'll be completely honest, but I do think that you have to price for the artwork like you would, like think about a painting that you make or like a ceramic that you create. It's not just the sum of its parts, right? So you start with the sum of its parts. You use industry standards to mark it up, and also for your labor. If you have to buy a bunch of Oncidium to make one tattoo because they wanted Oncidium or you wanted to use it, you got to charge for that if you can't resell it, of course. I've always been a studio florist, so I would have to build that in, to gather all of these beautiful little bits. And then I think, like what will the market bear? That's also a big thing. Like we were talking a little bit about that with Allison. Like if you're in Ann Arbor, Michigan, you can charge $65 for a wrist corsage. If you're in Jackson, Michigan, 30 minutes away, you can charge $22 max. It's just the nature of the community, So I think it's a number of things, and you just got to dial it in until it's right. But you have to pay yourself well. You have to, cover costs, and then I think price as an artist would. Yeah, but artists chronically undercharge, so there's that as well, right? And I think especially now with like wedding florists, like an honest pricing question from the get-go when you're meeting with them a year before their event, the supply chain is really unpredictable. Flower costs really unpredictable. Just let them know that this is the reality so that later, if you have to revisit the budget and you need to up it, they're not, the wind isn't taken out of their sails. They're expecting that we'll reevaluate this budget maybe 3 months before the wedding or something. That's what I would do, just so you're transparent and they understand where you're coming from. I ordered a loofah for my son to use in the bathtub, and this thing came from Amazon that was like, it was this long, and so it was like ridiculous. He was like, I'm like, here you go, have at it. It was hilarious. And then I thought, okay, that's ridiculous. So I took it from him, and I started examining it. And you guys know this comes from a gourd?
Yep.
Yeah, so cool. Anyway, I examined it, and it's a natural material. It's affordable. It has some density and like a weave you can use as an armature. It's like a supportive structure. So I thought that's really cool. So I started experimenting. And I found that it makes a really nice headpiece base. Okay, we're gonna have fun with that later. Everybody's gonna put it on and take a photo. I would love that. Okay, so you're probably thinking, what the heck? Why did you make that into a headpiece? Okay, so a lot of over-the-top like editorial headpieces are made with foam, so like a plasticky material that you mold, shape, and then it's lightweight and you can use it to attach flowers to, but it's still light enough so a person can walk down the runway, a person can move around for photos and so on. So I thought this is like a really cool, sustainable alternative to craft foam. It's somewhat moldable, you can kind of trim it. It has contours naturally, so it kind of, serves that kind of head shape. So I started playing with it, and I'm going to use my fabric scissors to cut this. Don't be afraid. I'm going to cut this into kind of a teardrop shape. That's one of the forms I'm really attracted to. I love like vintage hats, like kind of cloche hats that kind of hug one side, because I think that's a really dynamic arrangement of flowers for a person to wear. If something's placed on one side, then the eye goes there, then it traces across to see what else is interesting. So it doesn't take away from clothing really, and it doesn't stop the eye like a symmetrical piece would. So that's my thought with that. So I kind of cut into this guy. It's very dense, so you need to spray it to kind of soften it up, to even get the scissor through or even get wire through it. All right, so the wire that I've put in, I put in ahead of time because it is like this kind of situation. I didn't want to do that in front of you guys. So I put the wire through, and this is kind of my spine now that I can use to make this into, a more wearable shape for the head. So I'll just trim off the excess and then fold it in on itself. All right. And so now I have this that I can trim. I can take some of the bulk out if it's too, deep, if you will. I can trim out and create a nice shape. And then all these little pieces can do something else. I even use them in the kitchen to like scrub pots and stuff. It's like really great. It's really great. It's a great plant. And I grew them last summer. They took over my entire raised bed. 3 little plants that looked so innocent when I bought them. I'm telling you, every time I went out, I laughed because it was like I needed a machete, like seriously, to get through and see what I even had.
Were you able to harvest any of the gourds?
I did. I harvested, I think, 35. Yeah, but I think I must have planted them too late because they're supposed to kind of age on the vine and get brittle, and you can kind of shake them and hear the seeds, and all the flesh kind of dissipates, evaporates, or turns dry. And then you can clean them and you get, this nice thing. But in Michigan, our growing season's kind of short. Do you want to pass that around? And I planted in late May, so they were still really fleshy. I mean, it was ridiculous. I had this big Tupperware, and I was like trying to rinse out the flesh. It was like, ugh. There's some videos. It was kind of crazy. So I only ended up with maybe 10 that I could dry and save, and then the seed was too immature it was white and it's supposed to be black. So I wasn't able to plant them again this year. Okay, so I started with that. And then I strung this white bougainvillea that Allison brought for me. It has a little bit of blush on it. It's so pretty. And then I strung some dendrobium, which also has that icy green and a little hint of blush, so they like mingle well together. And then these are crown flower that hasn't popped yet, and then that has the icy green too. So some of them I strung on thread, and then some of them I wired so I could control them a little bit better. And then on the back, I took heavy gauge wire, 20 or 18, and I made 2 hoops. So I made a small hoop and a large on the back, and then I covered it with yarn. Thank you, Sue. And then I also took her yarn and deconstructed it and made like a floss. And then I placed the floss onto the loofah and stuck it in, kind of like how you felt. Stuck it into the little crevices so the back looks more finished. And then these 2 handles you use, so you can use it as a cascade bouquet, and then also as a headpiece. So I don't think I'm going to put it on now because I think that floss is going to stick in my hair and I'll get flustered. But let me show you how I added the flowers to this. Okay. All right. So the weave is so strong that you only need a few little loops to grab onto. You can kind of sew with your fine gauge wire. You just grab a few of those loops, you bring the wire around, and then, you know, kind of like finish it off back on itself. And then you just attach everything that way, kind of like sewing. And you can sew to these as well. I've sewed parrot tulip petals. Like I take little clusters, give myself a nice length of thread and like an upholstery needle that's a little bit thicker. And then you can sew right onto the loofah. So that's what I did. And it took a really long time, I'll be honest. So to wear this as a headpiece, these wires, I kind of went a little nuts. So they're a little thick for my liking, but a talented hairstylist could put a nice updo on a person, theoretically, and then pin these loops. So one loop would be, you know, this loop would be over, and this little one would be like kind of behind the ear is what I had envisioned. Yeah, we'll play with it. I'll have to find my big bobby pins. All right, so I'm gonna sew a few of these on, and then I'll pass this baby around so you can take a look. I like the fine gauge wire because you still get dangle and movement, but you can kind of manipulate, you know, so when you're styling it on the person for a photo shoot, you have some control. And I'm kind of like turning it up so I can sew in, kind of like is that an upholstery needle that's rounded? Yeah, kind of like that. Darning needle, yeah. So just kind of lifting it up and wrapping the wire around, and then you just trim it off. And then those wire ends won't poke anyone because they're hiding underneath your flowers. So I'm putting all the orchids kind of on one side. So each material I'm using kind of has its own moment. I love all the forage things because there's little tiny bugs crawling all over them, and then you put it on your head, and then you have a new ecosystem in there. I swear, I was on the plane kind of like I know I don't have fleas, but I put so many things on my head that there's something living in there. Oh. My favorite foraging story, I have a lot of them, but my favorite one, I was driving my kids to the zoo, and I noticed this cotinus patch, you know, smoke bush, like really big. and there was peach ones and like caramely ones, and I was like, oh my God, I have to go back. I have to go back. And so I didn't stop with them because they're like, Mom, you know, I can't stop with them anymore. But I went back the next morning. You know, you got to go kind of early, you know, because it's on the side of the highway, and you don't want to get like run over. So it was probably like 6:30 or something, and I wasn't quite awake, and I was so excited to stop. I had a big Ford Flex, you know, it was like a big old truck. I pull over, and I was so excited to get out and start picking that I didn't put the car in park, and the car started going down the ravine. And so you remember like Dukes of Hazzard, that kind of, I had to do one of those moves where I was running after the car, and the door was partly open, and I had to force myself into the open door, like as the car's going, and stop the car. It was hilarious.
Did you still pick after?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I saved the car. I hurt my legs. I had to force the car, like the tension, you know, when it's in motion, the door gets really heavy. All right, so this is the Cascade Bouquet / headpiece. You know, brides are not that fun usually. They don't want to be too fun. They just want to be a little fun. So maybe she would carry this for the wedding, and then maybe at the reception she could wear it as a headpiece. Maybe, but probably not. This is more for us. This is a piece for us. But you could do something lighter, not as bulky, you know, that would be more realistic, you know. I did wear flowers in my hair when I was married, but I wasn't a florist yet, so I wasn't that cool. I just had like a bunch of garden roses. But I think if you made something really light, maybe just with the orchids, something smaller, you know, somebody could potentially get 2 uses. And of course, for photo shoots. Okay, what do we have next? Oh, next we have the yellow, the statement piece. You guys tell me if I'm talking too long, too much, not enough, just right. Okay, so far so good.
Talking.
Keep talking, okay.
Toss flowers to us.
Yes, sorry. Thank you, Brenna, she's so great. Okay, so this piece is kind of sad because I abused the crown flower and it went brown on me. I was gonna use it anyway, but I thought not in Hawaii. That's just poor form. So this is a very simple bouquet, but I was again inspired by the materials that were gathered for us. And I mean, I'm from Michigan, so I don't see this. Do you see how beautiful this is? Can you tell? Can you tell how special? I would love to see like a chandelier, you know, deconstruct it and it hanging down, catching the light. It would be so beautiful. Or an arch mostly of this with other white flowers. Oh my gosh, it would be incredible. So I wired some of these sections, and they kind of remind me of cauliflower. It was kind of fun to take them apart. But gosh, like this, all these little spaces where you can kind of tuck flowers in and layer them in, I'm kind of excited about it. All right, so I just want 3 materials. I want to use the orchids that I stripped for the tattoos. I took their laterals off, so now they're perfect for the bouquet. They're ready to get worked in. And let's give ourselves a piece of this. Okay. So the biggest one, I took a stem from the trimmings from the compost and just taped it to the stem to give myself, you know, more of a handle. And then I'm just going to add these to my hand. They're already wired, and then I kind of, you know, bend them so they cascade nicely. I wish I had white tape, but I didn't bring it. Just adding it to my hand, super simple. And yeah, it's like a rain stick. And then I have the Dendrobium again. And then I'll just kind of feed these through, and then, you know, a few little strands will kind of keep it where I want it. So this is a case of, what is that? Is that real? Like, can I take a closer look? That's what I want to talk about with this. That's my reason for creating this very simple bouquet, because it's nothing tricky. It's just reacting to a really cool material and then deciding to use that as your inspiration. I put a lot of it in there. I need some longer bits so I can work in the Dendrobium. Oh, there's one. Thank you. Thanks. Okay, so I'll tape this off, and then I want to add a few of the Oncidium. And I'll use their natural weeping kind of formation. Uh-oh, I'm getting all cuckoo here. To kind of thread it in through the bottom of the bouquet, so I can have color throughout. I'm not going to finish this handle today, but I would normally finish it, of course, with ribbon or even raffia yarn, something to make it look really professional and then also comfortable to hold. Okay, I need to use my mirror. I have a lot of palm, not a lot of flowers. Okay, so I'm going to kind of guide this through. You could wire this, of course, but when I was testing with it, it was really nice and flexible, the stem. And then I want the orchids to kind of like peek underneath the strands of the palm. So again, it's kind of like, what is that cool thing that I'm seeing? Kind of getting people curious is always one of my goals. Often they don't care. Just kidding. I think about chefs a lot when I'm talking about floristry or thinking about floristry. And I'm thinking about the restaurants that I love, the people I admire, that I follow. I love Chef's Table. If you ever need a dose of inspiration, it's the most inspiring documentary series I think I've ever seen. It's beautiful. But the best artful restaurants in the world, like Noma, places like that, they're gathering the most interesting ingredients that are of that place, of that season, and then coaxing them into perfection. So like delivering them up in a very simple way so they can be appreciated, but also in a surprising way. So I think about those parallels a lot, like those chefs, because chefs and florists are similar. We work with perishable things. We work with the natural world. So anybody who's doing a really brilliant job at chefing, I like to pay attention and see how they're doing it. Maybe one more Oncidium, kind of on the top. I don't know. Is this too weird? Okay. I don't know, because like I'm up here and feeling, you know, like maybe I'm being kind of weird. Okay. Yeah, I follow fashion. When I follow fashion, though, I love McQueen. Like anything like really startling or really like unexpected or even kind of like grotesque in a way. Like I love that kind of art and I love that kind of fashion. Schiaparelli we were looking at last night. It's I think they're an Italian fashion house that started years ago with like really unexpected hats, and I love hats. But their accessory lines, Schiaparelli, are so like, it's like social commentary in jewelry. So I pay attention for sure, and I'm inspired, but I don't think I'm quite like as edgy as the inspirations that I follow. I guess I like anything that kind of piques curiosity or challenges like norms, you know? Like I'm really inspired by all the colors, all the vibrant colors I'm seeing here in person for the first time. And I'm thinking to myself, like, there's no reason to paint. I hope that a trend of paying attention to the color that's occurring naturally and leaning into that and exploring those like wild combinations, I hope that's a trend. And I see plenty of exciting materials that you have here to do that. I don't know. I think minimalism is probably going to continue to be desirable. I think people are really into transparency lately. So like less dense designs, less like decorative designs, and maybe more air, more minimalism, more transparency. But it's hard for me to know completely because I'm not talking to clients every day anymore, you know? So I just hang out with florists, and what we want to make is not usually, doesn't usually line up with what the public wants. But I think it's our job to explore and offer ideas and show them, like show your work, show the things that you want to be making so that they have an idea of what's out there. All right, I can see there's too much palm here. It's too dense. A little haircut. That's a little better. This one's got to go. Do you design in a mirror? Yeah, I think that's a must. Yeah, especially if you're a little newer at bouquet making, but I really feel like I can't make a bouquet if I don't have a mirror. All right, so I could futz with this some more, but I'm not going to. I'm going to move on so we can talk about other things too. Do you want to tape this, Brenna? You want to tape that and then pass it around? Sure. Thank you so much. It's super heavy, I'm sorry. Okay, and it's stuck. Okay. All right. That one got me sweating a little. Whew. All right, so this piece, I was inspired by all the yellows I was seeing. I was inspired by these. These are Song of India, actually, but I chose the ones that hadn't been receiving as much light as the others, so they're much lighter. So I was looking for yellow components, and I also wanted to keep it all yellow because I wanted to use the all yellow Oncidium that Greenpoint grows that's so beautiful. So that was the inspiration with the things I gathered. But what I wanted to show you here is natural armature with the palm that I took the seeds off of. And I just kind of gathered it into my hand and then take the tendrils and grab them and tuck them back into my hand. I do this with curly willow. This is one of the first armatures I was taught years ago from one of my mentors. It's really just a useful trick. And anything that's sturdy, that has some, structure can be used, as long as it doesn't lend anything bad to the water source, you know, because you're putting it in water. So then it can be tied securely. I like to save big, heavy rubber bands for that purpose, but I just have little ones today. So you want to cut that down pretty far because my vessel is shallow in this case. You can grab one stem, take the rubber band around, and secure it. Oh gosh, now I'm feeling the pinch of time. Okay, calm down. Calm down. Okay. I had a lot of coffee today too, like a lot. A lot. All right, so anyway, you get the gist on this guy. So then this can be tucked into a vessel instead of chicken wire. Of course, it's compostable. I also did it with monstera roots, and it worked really, really well. I used a lot. It was a dense ball, and I was able to put a lot of different size stems in there, and they held really beautifully. So hopefully that solves an issue or is fun to talk about. Okay. So from there, I like to work in more or less 9 floral layers. So that's something that I talk about a lot and think about a lot, is what materials lend themselves to what purpose in an arrangement. And as I said, I like to have systems. So knowing what components serve what purpose in the piece really makes me feel like comfortable and confident when I'm ordering. So I like to start with a structural layer. So I've done a few layers ahead of time. So the Song of India, structural because it's like the heaviest, firmest material, and it's kind of big. It'll help me carve out the size and the form I'm trying to create. So I'm kind of doing a triangle, like a asymmetrical triangle situation here. So I laid that in first, and then I go for typically a textural layer, I call it. So something that's interesting and fuzzy, something that cascades down, and I lay that in kind of coloring around the lines I created with the structural layer. And then I go for a line flower, and I have this, is it Calathea? Yeah, I love this material a lot. I like to pick out the little blooms. Okay, so then that goes in as kind of my line flower, reinforcing the placements that I already made with my other layers. And knowing I have that shape in mind, I can just work layer by layer in a really comfortable way. Do you guys think about that when you're planning centerpieces, or no? Maybe? Do you think about that? Yeah, of course.
Of course.
Yeah, some people don't. Can you see the loops of the palm in there? I made it a slightly bigger than the vase, so that I knew when I would set it into the vase, it would kind of, you know, there would be a little tension holding it in place. You could tape it down, but it didn't even need it. And the Song of India, I put it right in, and it held right in place. Okay, so after the textural layer, I guess this would be texture too. Maybe I won't use that. I'll go in and form kind of a base, a pillow with a mass flower typically. And that becomes kind of the backdrop for my subsequent layers. Look how big that is. It's like ridiculous. They're amazing. So I'll use these kind of low because they're so big. And they'll start to form this bright backdrop for my other focal flowers. And marigolds are so snappy because the heads are so heavy and the stems are hollow that if you order a lot of them for an event, you're going to have a lot of shorties. So I have 2 projects that show how to use the shorties. And so this would be one way to use them as your base. And I'll save some of the smaller ones to float up higher. So I like to have an asymmetrical focal pocket kind of situation here. I like to float some of the more interesting flowers down low. So I'll have one focal pocket here, and then I'll trace across to the other side and have one kind of opposite. And then I'll usually choose 2 other places in the piece to have 2 other focal areas, or like primary floral placement areas. That way when the viewer is looking at the composition, they look down low and see a focal area, they look up high, and then they look to the other piece. So, you know, your eye is going around and around. And that I think is how you create rhythm, obviously, but also a more dynamic piece that causes the viewer to look around. All right, so I'm going to use a few of these higher. So the garland would be the last. And when I'm talking too much, just bring the garland out. Yeah. All right, so we'll revisit these marigolds after we add the focal flowers. They're amazing. Oh, okay. I think I'm going to use these higher. Okay, let's go on to another focal flower. Let's go on to these guys. That's amazing. Lisianthus, locally grown. All right, so I like to have typically 2 focal flowers, and the largest I'll lay in first, and then the others will kind of float beyond. I'm always attempting to have different planes in the piece, so I don't want anything kind of at the same plane as its friend next door. Maybe we should focus on one side since I'm running low on time. So his friend is kind of reinforcing that placement, but it's not right at the same point, you know? And then my other focal pocket up here, this guy will hang out there. And then my third focal area, that guy will hang out there. You gotta talk to them and open them up, make sure they're happy. Maybe this will play in that higher focal area. Okay, and then to reinforce that, another focal layer. So I usually have 2 focal layers, and then I have 2 secondary floral layers, typically.
Do you normally take the pollen out of the Lisianthus?
Say it again?
It looked like you took the pollen out. Is that something you normally do on Lisianthus?
I tend to, yeah. Maybe that's not long enough for my purposes here. Maybe I'll use this green one. And I'm really attracted to work that has a lot of air around the components, so I'm attempting to do that with my placements. You use less flowers, which is nice. So the natural armatures won't be as, tried and true as chicken wire because there's some variability in the, the loops of the piece. But if you find a spot that feels too loosey-goosey, just kind of reapproach, find another spot that's a little bit denser. Or you could do the banyan, which is super dense, like not budging at all. So then this guy, it's too special to be a secondary flower, but you know what I mean. It's a little bit smaller than the other guys. So I'll lay those in as well, find little spots for them to shine. I have to say I need more practice with Anthurium, placing them. Do you have any rules? Do you like them to talk to each other, or like ride together in the car, or like? They're incredible. I love them. They're almost like they're a foliage and a flower together, which is really unique. And so I have these layers, okay? But you could use one flower to achieve all of these purposes. Like if you were just working with marigolds, you could set your shape with the marigolds and then like slightly shorter for, you know, to fill it in with the line. And you just keep working and working, kind of manipulating and facing the materials and peppering them in to the piece so it suits all those different purposes. I think the special sauce, though, with the floral layer approach is the last one, which is the finishing layer. So those delicate, lacy elements, things like vines, things like, I mean, this is, right? It's crazy pretty. I think it must be hard for growers and breeders to watch us cut the stems.
Go ahead. You're finding more use.
Yeah.
And you can have a few stems and get more use out of it, so that's great.
It's kind of a crime, though. Okay, I'm not going to cut you because you're very long. I'll cut you shorter ones. So I learned that there's different grades, stem length grades with these. I didn't know that before I visited the farm. That was pretty cool. All right, so I think this is going to be a case of me finishing this after the fact because I cannot see the front at all. And I want to show you the last design because I think it's a really useful one. So I'll go on and work with that. And revisit this with the last focal layer, or the last floral layer rather, which is a vine. I like to have some kind of vine so I can kind of tease it up into the piece and have it cascade down and kind of reinforce that, like the sprinkles on a cupcake, like that last little special layer. So we'll move this to the side and I'll finish it. And then you guys, if you like it enough, you can take a photo, but not now, okay? Not now. Down here? Okay. Thank you.
Do you want the piece before you do that or after?
So, because I'm a wearables nut, I like to think, I love installation work too, big, large scale installations. I like to kind of talk about them as corsages for a room. So they have commonalities with wearables. They're meant for a special occasion. They're not expected to last long. And they're not necessarily going home with anybody, right? Like a centerpiece. So for me, installations have to be made ahead of time so that you're not working your buns off right before the event. They have to be easy to install, and then they only have to last the length of the event. So that, for me, allows a lot more creativity and the ability to design sustainably. So I don't think we always need elaborate water sources for installation work, because at the end of the event, people aren't taking that big arch home or whatever, it just needs to perform for the length of the event. So my best friend is the chicken wire. After the glue, it's the chicken wire. And what I like to do is make chicken wire burrito, sushi roll, whatever your favorite is. I stuff it with something dense and I roll it up like this. So ideally it would have a few swirls of wire inside so that when you stick a stem in, it catches a few times and it's really locked in place. And so I make these once. I use materials that are that can dry nicely without getting messy, and I reuse them again and again. I have burritos that are like 10 years old, and I just put them in my supply crazy closet, and then I pull them out and I combine them to create whatever form I need. So this can, you can bring out the Big Daddy. These burritos can be placed on a mantle. You can attach them to a board, a 1x4, okay? You can carry it and place it on a mantle. You could attach it to a tree. You could attach it to a banister. It can be a garland for a table, like this guy. And they're really easy to transport. Get a little workout.
This mine's good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but you can see I don't have any board, I don't have any metal rods, I just have that sturdy branch inside. And this is realistic. You could make this on Wednesday. Spray it with water, tent it, and then it can go to the party, maybe on the van floor, or if you have racks, if you have shelving systems in your van, they can slide right on the shelving racks. If you don't have a big van, you can make them in 2 pieces and then plop them together at the party. But for me, I call this a versatile garland. This can do a number of things. It could even hang vertically on a wall, right? Or you could attach it to a huppah in either orientation. Yeah, so I use this all the time. So I love to share, and it's a really simple technique. And I think Hitomi has been using it for years as well. Plenty of other florists. Everybody loves chicken wire. But sometimes you don't have time to explore like all the uses for something so simple. So I like to make sure to highlight the different uses. Design the reliable materials ahead of time, and then have your water tubes prepped, and then you can add the dainty, beautiful things that you don't want, to get destroyed in the van on site. And then those guys just slip right into those little crevices in the chicken wire. And then you can, finesse your blooms so they face the right way. And then when you pick up at the end of the night, you take these back and you use them tomorrow, right? For the next event. It's great for holiday work, for mantles, for outdoor. Even like in garden design, you can make, these burritos and train vines up them. A lot of uses. Okay, I'm gonna do it. Sorry, don't look. So anyway, you can see what I'm up to. I'm just adding like the icing layer to this. And then I also love this vine to kind of add something dancey and light and airy over the heavier flowers and materials I have. This Pacalana. It's beautiful and it smells incredible. So that would go over and finish the piece and kind of dance around all the nooks and crannies that I have. Oh my gosh, got a real tangle here. It looks like sweet potato foliage. It's really beautiful. All right. Yeah, thank you. So at the end of the event, for install work in general, when I used to do a lot of events, I had a pickup guy, which I highly recommend if you can at all find one. It can be a gal or a team. But I think picking up at the end of a really busy week at midnight is like cruel and unusual punishment. So if you can find someone who has that job, definitely do that. And then I would just have them take a tarp and like put all these big pieces in the tarp and just roll it up like a dead body, tie it up, and then deliver it to my studio, and then I clean it out when I have time. So I don't think you have to kill yourself on the cleanup part. If you use materials inside the burrito that are sturdy, you don't have to worry about them, getting damaged. You just clean it up when you can. So I just put all the natural materials in the compost and then clean out my chicken wire tubes, like I said, and put them back in the closet for next time. So if this was for an arch, I would already have my mechanics, definitely. I like rustic wire, Oasis rustic wire. It's like a paper-covered, really dense, heavy-duty wire. I like that. Zip ties, of course, make fast work. But I also, for like hanging installations or things that really need to retain a certain form, like a crescent piece or something, I like to get 1/4-inch steel rods from the hardware store. They're really strong, but you can bend them with your own strength. So I insert those. I like weave them into the wire, and then I can massage it into whatever shape I want, and then it holds that shape. And they're like $6 a piece. So that way you have something really reliable, and you know it's not going to sag under the floral weight and so on. Yeah. And then it's a matter of using materials that you know will last the length of the event and in the environment where they're placed. So I talked to florists who live like in Utah where it's 100 degrees and no humidity, and I think they're just doomed, like even with a water source, But, think about materials that are really resilient in your area. Things like the podocarpus and, things that don't need water to be beautiful, and kind of start there and then build your recipe around that. It's kind of how I approach it. All right. Okay. So there's the versatile garland. I'm going to add a few more orchids after we're done and probably a few more vines, but you can see even one person can transport it and pick it up and plop it down. And it makes a really beautiful runner for an event. Yeah. Thanks, guys.